Deven Choksey, MD of KR Choksey Securities, also joins in with his perspective on the market. Deven, good to have you on the show. A lot has happened over the last 1 month in terms of macro policy triggers as well as earnings news flow. What do you make of the market at the current levels and where it can go from here?
Well, I think a lot of headwinds against the market's momentum, particularly because of the regulatory issues, particularly because of the non-implementation of the policy issues, and at the same time, I think nasty provisions like GAR, I think has certainly affected the confidence of the people, so which has probably taken away many people from directly participating into the market at current levels. And adding fuel to the fire, the issue is that ETFs have withdrawn money. And in such kind of a situation, when there is a higher amount of requirement to pay for the oil bills, and withdrawal of this money is again working negative on the rupee front, which is once again putting off the global investors stroke traders to participate into the market. So generally the participation is missing. The headwinds are very strong on that front, and basically what we find that despite of companies' performances, which have come by and large on lines of expectation, and in some cases even little better than expectations, I think the market participation is not increasing. To my mind, I think the issues would probably get resolved on the GAR side, maybe I think before the finance bill is implemented, and that clarification should help in general people stay back in India and not withdraw money, which would ultimately bring down the pressure on rupee as well, and that could possibly be seen as a good news going forward. So I'm relatively more confident that the market going forward could possibly have an up move vis-a-vis the sluggish or the down move that we have seen in recent times.
What do you make of the numbers that came in from the two heavyweights, Deven, Bharti Airtel and Hindustan Unilever?
Well, Hindustan Unilever, to talk first, I think certainly on the volume front the company has grown, and even despite of increasing the prices of individual products, I think the company has grown significantly in volume front. That gives me the confidence that actual the Bharat, as we call it, or rural India, is having amount of purchasing power, and which is allowing the FMCG companies like Hindustan Unilever to register better performance. I have no doubt in my mind that this performance is most likely to continue because of the higher amount of disposable surplus in hands of people, and going forward with the implementation of infrastructure-led projects would leave more amount of money in hands of people finally. So that is something which I am a little bit more confident about for HUL, though on valuation side I think the comfort level is not as high as the prospects for the business. Bharti numbers, if you look at, I think the average of last few quarters, that is 4 to 6 quarters, and if you start looking at every ratio that the company has produced, one assessment comes out very clearly that the company probably has bottomed out on the performance as far as I think the average performance is concerned. The company most likely I think remains steady at current levels of performance, and higher level of growth could be seen with the increase in the tariff that all of them are squarely implementing across. So from that point of view, the performance may not go down from what it is at this point of time. However, the larger issue remains on one or two front. One, of course, I think the amount of amortization cost that they will have to bear due to 3G rollout, and now with the 4G coming up. And the second important issue is about the spectrum related issues on the regulatory side. If that regulatory, I think, proposal is getting implemented, then to my mind, I think we'll have to forget Indian telecom companies for next 3 years to 5 years. It is dangerous kind of a proposition which has been proposed, and I think that could probably mean death of some of the telecom companies. So I'm a little bit more worried on that front, not as much on the performance of the company, which in all likelihood could possibly remain steady to little better from current levels.
What is the call on pharmaceuticals right now? Deven, and FMCG, which are traditionally defensives, but valuations are clearly not cheap for both the sectors.
Okay, I think within pharmaceuticals, certainly you have different companies to look at. Ranbaxy kind of a company which has remained underperformer for last 2 to 2.5 years has basically started showing some signs of growth prospects. US FDA clearance is coming in, and at the same time higher amount of growth assumed in the current financial year is suggesting that Ranbaxy kind of company could be, I think, much better placed comparatively within the pharma space when it comes to generating return out of the portfolio. Cipla could be similar kind of a choice. A large company with higher amount of ANDA filed and having a significant amount of ANDAs across the geographies would mean that Cipla would have higher amount of generic growth business coming in this particular financial year. They already built in the capacities on the formulation side, and that could possibly give them an advantage for taking the benefit of the launch of the products going forward. So these two companies, they are relatively looking better off compared to the others. Glenmark certainly looks, I think, interesting from our point of view. I think we will probably have to see and validate how exactly the growth comes in, and I think the milestone payments also factors into the business of the company going forward. So we like these three companies. Of course, I think valuation wise they are not cheap, but at the same time around 20% kind of an upside should be possible over 12 to 15 months time in each of these companies.
Deven, you spoke about a couple of numbers which have done well. The other set of news flow that has been there in today's session has been the auto sales numbers, and have been particularly tepid for a couple of counters. What did you make broadly of what's happened to certain two-wheelers like TVS, and also the numbers that came out from M&M stable?
Well, M&M has been, I think, spectacular and probably, I think, much better than what all of us probably thought about. Of course, a known fact is that they have got a large amount of order book to execute because of the advance booking that has been done. But M&M largely remains, I think, more positive comparative to the other ones. In the other companies, probably I think I'm not giving as much of weightage, because probably if you are looking at month over month factor, then probably March month and the February month has probably played a bigger role in those companies in generating higher sales, because of in cars, I think the diesel car probably in anticipation of hike in the duties, most of the people bought it pre-budget. That is in February and March, I think you saw those numbers coming in. And in case of petrol cars also, I think people, when they came to know that the respective state governments are increasing their registration cost, probably I think the sales took place in the last month, in the month of March vis-a-vis in the month of April. So April figures are disappointing. One of the reasons is for them to remain disappointing because of the earlier months influences. To my mind, till the festive season starts in this particular financial year, you are likely to see, I think, some amount of disturbing numbers in many of these companies, and that is where I think one would probably find opportunities at lower levels. If market gives up in next 3 to 4 months in auto companies, probably you might find some of the good values available at lower price, because subsequently in the second half of the financial year, I do expect with the revival in the sentiments in the economy and the little lower interest cost, the pickup in the auto sales to take place. So if one wants to buy into them, maybe the right time would be to buy into when the market gives up or they are available at lower prices in coming months.
What did you make of what's happened in some of the banking numbers? It's been split right down the middle. The last 2 days or 3 days, if there has been an OBC which has come out with a stellar set of numbers, there has been conversely a couple of other names like Vijaya which haven't been really able to do so. What do you make of all the numbers that came out? I mean, what I meant was a Bank of India which came out with a really good set of numbers. OBC was a bit of a disappointment, so to say. What did you make of all the numbers that came in?
Yes, I think you will have to look at, I think, the banks, within the PSU banks, you have to look at segregated banks which are large banks and smaller banks. In a smaller bank scenario, you are going to be seeing disappointing numbers continuing because of the larger amount of influences of the provisioning. At the same time, I think lack of growth in the credit business itself, I think, for them. Whereas the large size banks probably in the PSU space would not be as disappointing as the other smaller banks are. And Bank of India is one such consideration that one would like to apply and see how exactly the numbers for State Bank of India and other things would come out. But to my mind, in this particular quarter and subsequently in coming quarters, with the lower amount of provisioning requirement coming in for many of the banks due to the fall in the interest rate and the yield portfolios, that could possibly mean positive. Lower amount of NPA due to kickstart of the projects would also again be sounding positive. So to my mind, I think the next 4 to 6 quarters are looking more sure than what we have seen in last 3 to 4 quarters as far as the PSU bank, frontline banks are concerned. The private sector banks, on the other side, due to the strong business model and generating higher amount of income due to the fee-based portfolio that they have been able to maintain not only the credit growth but also exceeded in some of the cases. In case of, I think, companies like even ICICI for that matter, I think surprisingly very positive numbers. So from that point of view, if you look at it, some of the private sector banks have certainly done well and likely to do better in coming quarters. So I am relatively more confident about banks like Axis Bank or IndusInd Bank and ICICI Bank within the private sector bank, and within the public sector bank would certainly like to stay with State Bank of India. Any fall in the market due to any reason, I think would be an accumulation opportunity in them.